who else you've worked with in your career who's given you insight or a continued support. I mean, obviously Pedro as a director has been, I imagine, everything at certain points in your life. But is there a performer as well who's given that to you, other than your husband, or
Well,
probably maybe your husband?
exactly. I was gonna say my husband, because I have such an amazing actor at home. You know, I
You
am
really
able
do.
to work with him. Like sometimes read scripts together. I read his, he reads mine, and then we can give each other ideas. And we don't talk about work all the time. I mean, you know how that is. But to be able to have that, to go and say, what do you think about this, or what do you think about this scene, and also to have had the opportunity to work with him a few times, like 4 or 5 times. And it's not something that I would do every 2 years, because that's risky, I think. I mean, if we have survived playing Pablo Escobar and Virginia Vallejo and I didn't kill him then, it's okay. But it's not something that I think is safe to do very, very often. But once in a while, I love it. I think he's such an incredible actor.
This is so surreal. Of all the moments in my life to meet you and talk about your work and this film, the fact that there's a pandemic and we're having to do it through computers, it's a slight tarnish on what is a very lovely thing to be in your company.
And to be in yours also, it's an honor. You know, we met briefly, but we met during Zoolander.
Oh, fuck, yeah. Oh, sorry, I can't say that.
Profanity! Not allowed.
No, strike it. When it comes to Zoolander, surely we're allowed to be profane. Yeah. Did we just cross paths on that night shoot? Did I see you very briefly?
Yeah, exactly. We saw each other in Rome briefly.
That's right. Oh my God, that was such a crazy 24 hours for me.
It was really funny what you did.
Oh, thank you. There was a lot of contention around that, understandably now. In this era, it would never have fallen to anybody other than a trans actor to play the role. But I remember at the time not thinking of it necessarily in that regard, and it being more about two dinosaurs, heteronormative cliches, not really understanding this new diverse world. But yeah, it kind of backfired a little bit. But it was lovely to meet you in that brief moment and to work with Ben and Owen and the craziness of that film, being such a huge fan of the first one. So, yeah.
It was great to meet you, and I'm happy we're here talking, even if it's through electronics. But hope to see you in person soon and to be able to give you a hug and congratulate you for this amazing performance that you did.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, likewise. I mean, I just thought Parallel Mothers was just both of you at the height of your 7 films of the last 11 that you've done together. It's always so satisfying, I find, as a viewer, how the color and the contrast, things are quite flat and everyday and normal, and just the rich textures and the colors and shadows even starting to creep in as the story really complexifies and the melodrama spins out and the twists and turns become exhumed. And I just love the parallel mothers, but also the parallel dynamics between every generation of being a child, being a mother, being a daughter, and what it means, and that kind of dialogue between the past and the present and the potential of a future with a baby on the way.
Mi amor, yo te quiero mucho, ¿eh? Adiós, bonita.
How do you collaborate with him? I know, for example, with Volver, I think you rehearsed for like 3 months. Did you have a long rehearsal period for this as well?
In Parallel Mothers, it was even a longer period. We rehearsed like 4.5 months. I know that you had also a long period of training with Jane, and you had to prepare for so many things and so many physical skills and the accent and so many challenges, and you were great at all of them. I love having directors that want to give you that time and ask you to block that time, because otherwise I would just do it by myself or with my acting teacher or look away to have that preparation time, which is sacred and over the years has become more and more important. But with Pedro I think this was the longest time, but we always have at least 2 or 3 months of preparation. And he's involved with every department. He gives months to every department. Is there to answer every question, also to ask questions, which is a great thing about him. I enjoy every single moment of the process with him, but maybe those rehearsal times, the process of trying everything, making mistakes, not being afraid of doing all wrong, and I enjoy it. It's such an incredible school for me, to be there with him
And I had a similar experience with Jane. It wasn't rehearsing all the time, but it was just letting the character marinate, talking about him, trying to discover him and his past, and all the kind of skill acquisition I had to kind of master, from the accent to the roping to the banjo playing. That was another one. Whittling, with the list goes on. But really, the most important thing was just excavating him and his psyche, and feeling confident about then being free to let things happen on the day. And the only time I've really experienced that before, certainly not in a film, has been in the theatre. And I wonder if you had any theatre background, or if this is the closest you get to it, because he seems to work with actors as if they are a repertory company. Obviously, repeat performances, performers rather, like yourself, that he trusts and knows. And it's very, very rare. It's a wonderful thing. You're part of, it feels like you're part of a company.
It's true that after so many months of rehearsals, sometimes we would rehearse 40 minutes of the movie straight with no pause, in the real location, in the house of the character. And that you can only have after lots of time. And I never did theater professionally. I haven't been brave enough yet, that's the truth, because I've been offered interesting things, but I haven't. Someday when my kids are older.
Oh, you should. There's all that Lorca waiting for you as well. There's so many great Spanish plays for you to do. That would be amazing. But it has that coherence. It has that sort of depth, the level of performance and the trust in performance that the camera gives, the intimacy that it has in Pedro's films.
Pedro is a blessing in that way, and I imagine that Jane must be a very similar process. And actually, now that we are talking about them, I think they have something in common that is very rare. Like, there are two of the directors that are also visually stronger and very particular, but nothing is there in a capricious way. Like, I can see in every shot from Jane, it's like, Pedro, everything is calculated. Everything is there for a reason. Nothing is there just because she feels, oh, that's pretty or that's beautiful. Or everything has a meaning. And with Pedro is the same, even the selection of the colors. The colors in Parallel Mothers.
He's such a master colorist, and I'm fascinated by the psychology of colors, and it's so bold in his films. It's such a statement, but like you say, it feels natural. It felt like your character's style of interior decoration, someone who wanted things to pop because she works in a visual medium as a photographer, so things are very graphic in her house. It married with the character, and I agree. I think Jane is a master of that as well. I think every sort of choice of her frame is sometimes subconscious, it's sometimes poetic. It's about something that resonates with her that she can't specify. And she calls some of the shots in The Power of the Dog her little secret weapons, like the horse's mane blowing in the breeze the morning after the rope's been made, and that intimate scene in the barn, and the small bit of blood from Phil's cut in the field when they're lifting the pile of wood, see how many it takes before it collapses on the rabbit, and also holding the frame and also the story around issues of family, but very much issues of femininity and masculinity. Really strong female characters in all of Jane's films. Yeah. While this is seen as a departure, motherhood, being a child, it's ever present, whether it's my absent mother or the mother I'm rebelling against, the father who's seemingly voiceless in that relationship and in that space, and that effect on Phil, who's very much out of their control, and who they don't understand. Have only, I think, probably attempted to mold into what they understand a child should be, which is the more placable, kind and gentle George that Jesse Plemons plays. It just kept echoing with me. I have this thing of kind of imposter syndrome, like, can I, especially for a part like Phil Burbank, I'm so far away from him. I'm like, is this really me? Can I do this? And when I read the book, I was like, there are better actors for this role than me.
I 100% have imposter syndrome. I understand you very well.
Know what we should do?
What's that?
Go camping again in the mountains and shoot ourselves some fresh elk liver. Cook it right there on the coals, like Bronco Henry taught us.
Their themes as directors seems to be very, very much in sync. I wonder if they've met. They must have done. They must know each other somehow, right? I
think they saw each other in Venice this year, and I'm sure they met before. And I know Pedro loves her work, and I guess it would be interesting. She does. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about Phil because I'm very fascinated by him. I guess you never... I was terrified of you from the beginning, but I also understood the pain from the beginning, and I guess you never approached him as playing the bad guy.
No, I always sort of blanch slightly when people say, a couple of people come up to me and said, I couldn't watch your film because your character is so mean and you're such a bad person in this. How was it to be so mean to people? And even if there's never an explanation, I always dive into a role trying to understand why somebody does something. And the minute you try and build a bridge between behavior and the cause of it, you start to empathize through an understanding, through a reasoning, which, it doesn't condone that behavior necessarily, but it at least explains how it occurred. And for me, he's a very tragic figure. He's someone whose ability to love and be loved was truncated in tragedy from the first moment, because it was a forbidden love. I mean, I think we can say this now the film's out. He's suppressing his sexuality. And I think it happened so young in his life, with an older man as well. Not that it was abusive, but I think there was definitely an element of him not really understanding it. Although he's, I think, as a very young man, very in possession, from what I read in the book anyway, of who he is and his identity. So I don't think there's any unknowing seduction. I think it's complicit and consensual, but I don't think he's figured it out before this man is then killed in front of him. And so it just stops him and freezes him up. And he still has this thing in him, and he remembers that man. Jane was like, "Oh, I'm sure he's had a few cowhands here and there," and I'm like, I don't think he has. No, I think this thing, it would be far too dangerous. It was a thing born out of an intimacy and a trust that wedded them into their secret. And whether people suspected there was something going on, that's not for me to say. That's for other actors. It wouldn't have been fully understood in the way that it is now, and it might have been known but buried.
And that's what breaks my heart about the movie. It represents what still today happens. I have friends in that situation in 2022, and they have not been able to share with their own parents out of fear of being rejected who they really are. And that is really heartbreaking, and I think it's expressed in such a beautiful way. And the scene that is very emotional for me is actually the scene where you are by yourself playing with the foulard that has his initials.
Yeah.
And the sensuality of that scene, but also the sadness of that's where you really see him being himself. And I see like a little lost boy.
Yeah. For me, that moment was more intimate than the moment where I'm fully naked. It was more unnerving in a way. It was very beautiful what they constructed. I mean, it was just literally Ari, our extraordinary DOP, and Jane. That was it. All the other crew just slunk back. And Jane and I had talked about it a little bit. We talked about what this moment meant for Phil, about the nature of his privacy and being able to reveal himself and commune with Bronco. And we spent many hours I'd written letters to him from me, and I read them to Jane. I also read the responses from him. So I sort of examined that affair from both sides, or tried to kind of manifest it. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of let go, and it was a beautiful day, and there really was sunlight, dappled sunlight coming through this glade of cottonwood trees and this long grass, and the horse was calm. I just kind of lost myself in it, a sort of dream of communing with him.
It's such a beautiful scene.
It's so different from anything else of him that's seen, really, apart from maybe the first scene where I visit the river, the sacred places we kind of called it, and I bathe the first time rather, of 2 times in the year cycle of the film. And I kind of, it's that same playfulness, the childishness of it, especially with the water just blowing bubbles and being on my own, being free to be anything but the sort of show of masculinity that he parades most of the other time. Although I believe he is very masculine. He's a very masculine man. Whatever his sexuality or true kind of identity is inner self, he does have a learned brutality as well as a sensuality about him. Those things do just coexist. It's not just an act.
Come on, Phil, what is it? There is something there, right?
Not if you can't see it, there ain't.
You're carrying secrets in front of characters all the time in Parallel Mothers. How you went about rehearsing that? I mean, I suppose if you rehearse it, there was never any point where you were not having the material. And some directors I know hold back a reveal so that there's an element of surprise in the moment that it's first put on a character. But if it's known material, how do you navigate that?
Most of it we shot chronologically, and it was really, really helpful. And I was, as you can imagine, terrified for the couple of weeks where we had to shoot the confession because I didn't want to give away the truth because I was so possessed by her and so obsessed that it was really, really affecting me, especially in those weeks of the confession. We were actually competing for the attention of the little girl, the baby, who was 1 year old. And we talked about that a year later. Do you realize we were competing for the actress, for the 1 year old? When somebody asked me, do you think she was doing something really bad, like this huge moral dilemma? She's lying about such an important thing. And sometimes most people agree with her decisions, but sometimes people can judge her a little bit of, oh, she stays quiet for too long. She's such a huge liar. And I feel, no, I think she's a hero for talking when she does. She's risking everything, and she's an orphan. We cannot forget that she had nothing. She never was able to have a family. The mother died of an overdose when she was a baby, abandoned by the father. Everything goes wrong with the partner. Now she has the little girl and this huge threat of, now you're gonna lose this too. So for me, it was such a great relief to have the permission to play a great liar in life, also because the motivation behind was love, this huge love that she has never felt before. And it made me think of this feeling of, okay, I have this permission to lie for a good cause, because I'm not a good liar in life. And then when I read some of your interviews and you were talking about how sometimes in life you want to please people, and this character gave you the permission to do the opposite. And I thought maybe this is one thing that we have in common in this process of these two characters, because it's such a relief.
Yo no tengo dudas.
Pero yo sí.
Ya, mi amor, ya está. Yo solo me acosté con Arturo.
Pues entonces ha salido tu padre.
Durante todos estos meses te he estado ocultando algo.
I was given full permission to be Phil at his worst as well as his best, and she introduced me to the crew as the character and said, "You'll meet Ben at the end of the shoot. He's really nice. You're working with Phil." And so that meant the kind of English bumbling me could kind of just go, okay, no apologies, no people pleasing. I can just stand proud in who he is and respect the strength he has, as well as this, you know, the reason he is twisted into a kind of pretzel of hate through what he's carrying all the way through his bad behavior. And the childishness of it, that's something that really intrigued me. Even in the height of drama, when this marriage of opportunity and preparedness comes up with this hide that Peter has prepared that has anthrax, that all comes about because the mother gives away the hides that he's been saving to a passing troop of a father and son, an Indian American native. They give away basically the hides, and he becomes so childishly possessed with rage. It's like, but they're mine, they're all mine.
Why would she do that, Phil? She knew that we needed the hides.
Because she was drunk! Pie-eyed! She was smashed!
And it's the same maybe with her baby. She knows it's not hers, but how could she give it away? And also on top of that, you know, you're dealing with the grief of knowing that your child, in all probability, is the one who died. And so I have huge empathy for your character, you know, needing to keep something from moving again and having a bit of control over that. I got it. But I think we're both working with characters that require quite a lot of empathy to forgive in those moments.
Yeah, but it's such a blessing to have material like this.
And it's very much about that character evolving through, you know, revelation and a slow burn in the material that Jane brought out of the book. In her linear narrative, she had to let him exist in his abhorrent form for quite a large part of the film. So it is, I understand, I have empathy. I have empathy for people who struggle to watch it, or struggle to watch him and what he does to Rose in particular, especially because of how really Kirsten Dunst manifests it, and she's just extraordinary. Her performance is so profound.
She's incredible in the movie.
She's amazing, and moving from being a strong woman in a very isolated situation as it is, as a widower, running a saloon restaurant in a small one-horse town until the Burbanks turn up, and a son who she doesn't quite understand, who's growing away from her as well, and then to just evolve into the situation where she falls in love with someone who's equally as lonely as her, and then is tortured by his brother in this strange, alienating, drafty, really kind of oppressive place that their home is, their ranch in the middle of all that land, and using alcohol to medicate and just slipping into alcoholism. It's an amazing arc. what I put Rose through is pretty hard to watch, I think, for anyone. And also the moment where I take my frustration out on the horse, I can't watch that moment at all.
Oh no,
Even though I
that's
was
pretty
hitting the
pretty
camera.
hard too. Same with
It's
the rabbit. There are a few very
yeah,
hardcore moments,
few
but
moments.
it's easy to understand the pain that is behind, and not to justify those actions, but you make it easy for us to understand the trauma.
And I think the kind of trick of the film and the way Jane's plotted it and the character evolution and revelation is that by the end you should feel for Phil. You should, in some ways, mourn his loss as much as the inevitable conclusion to his behavior.
And I was wondering, because you also have children, I have two. Since I have children, my approach to the work really changed, because before that I used to think the more I make myself suffer on purpose, like the extra, like gratuitous amount of suffering. No, you're gonna suffer anyway in a character like this, and it's such a blessing. Thank God we have challenging material, but that changed after having my children. I really, really try not to bring that darkness home. And it's not even darkness, it's also there is so much light in trying to represent that kind of pain with some truth, because you are honoring people that can be in similar situation.
Yeah, completely.
So, but I was wondering, with you were for 9 months in Montana, right? Or you were part of the time there and part in New Zealand?
I was in Montana only for a couple of weeks, actually. We shot it all in New Zealand. And even the studio stuff, it was all in the south, on the South Island, and then in Auckland.
But your family was not, the kids were not there?
No, they were all there, because first of all, we had 2 weeks rehearsal where they weren't there. And that's when I tried going full Phil and not washing and just discovering who he was really in his body for the first time in front of Jane and with the other cast members. And that was the only rehearsal. Like it sounds, Pedro obviously works around the script and the conceit of the scenes, and things grow out of that. It wasn't necessarily playing the scenes. There were more exercises of discovery through playfulness, through odd kind of activities. Like I waltzed with Jesse Plemons, who plays George, to gain an intimacy that I would have had with somebody that I've grown up with. We're both in our 40s. Mm-hmm. We've slept in the same room, these brass beds side by side for all of our lives. And I would know him, his smell, his movement, his sounds, his breathing, all of it. And just so to have that immediate need to be close to someone in a waltz, just kind of something clicked in. I had a time of preparation that was separate from the children and Sophie. And then also when I was filming, it was on a location that was about an hour's drive away. It meant I had enough time to meditate through music, look at the landscape, mm-hmm. and own that, because obviously the land is so much a part of this character, and he brings the outside in. He is nature. It's caked on him. His work is on him. He smells of it. He looks of it, and he doesn't really accommodate anything to do with indoor life, or whether it's washing or appearance. So it was a really helpful thing to have that drive in, and I'd put on a costume that wasn't washed for the whole shoot in some quite hot weather as well as cold weather. But when I got in the car at the end, after taking the makeup off, I would have a drink of something, and I would have a shower when I got home and embrace my children. There was enough time to devolve between the location and home, and because I was so intensely in character for this one all the way through the working day, it was A, I don't think I could have been that far away without my family. B, I never would have been. I just have a sort of
no, me neither, of course, no way, no way.
I can't. They're too small, even if they weren't. It's like I have a 2-week rule, and that's it.
I don't even have that one. I mean, I do whatever I can do in Madrid, and then if I have to shoot for 2 or 3 months, we all go together in the summer. And if I have to say no to a lot of things because of this, this is the way I choose to do it, and I'm grateful that I'm able to share both things, to combine both things. But being a mom is my priority. And it's tricky with characters like this. And what you're saying is very similar to what I was feeling. And some days I just had to stay with Pedro for an extra hour and just cry it out right there with him and hug him and slowly come back to reality, so that I wouldn't take that home, because it's impossible to. If we say, no, it's not affecting me, we know we're lying.
Sí. Arturo, soy Janice. ¿Estás en Madrid?
Sí, pasado.
¿Puedes venir, por favor?
Pedro has the most perfect, amazing schedule, because you can take your kids to school and then go to the set, and then it's like 10 hours. He doesn't like starting too early or finishing too late, so it's perfect.
Yeah, Jane's the same. I think she'll allow me to say that. And she also likes nap time in the middle of the day, which is just great.
No, Pedro doesn't, and he doesn't like the long breaks in the middle of the day, which I hate also because all the concentration goes away.
I find sometimes the release lets something else in. I think if you know a moment is complete, I'm fine with it. It's hard to pick something up that you've just started after a break.
No, that drives me crazy.
It does, right? Yeah, it's not great. But then at other times, it can be very hard to get something, and maybe it is because your stomach needs food, or you need some kind of a small, gap.
You know who was my teacher? The main teacher that I've had in my life about this was Ben Kingsley. Because when I worked with him in Elegy, if we were in the middle of a very emotional, very difficult scene, and I would get mad if something, like there was a noise or something, like we'd have to stop the take. And he would look at me, and with no words, just with his actions, the inspiration of just really include whatever happened into the scene. We all know the theory of that, but let's do it. Let's try it, with a smile on his face. And it was the most inspiring person that I've worked with that in those terms, because I'm such a control freak, and that is like number one enemy of acting. It's such a lesson every day, and he was a true master of that for me, a true inspiration.
And I'm fascinated to hear that, because for me, he's a masterful technician. So to hear how free he is to just let whatever is happening not interfere, but just facilitate, it's inspirational, and it's very freeing from someone who seems to be so in control of his craft, to know that he doesn't let those uncontrollable things get to him. It's a great lesson. I can agree more. It's the most important in a way, because then you are free to play. And I wonder who else you've worked with in your career who's given you insight or a continued support. I mean, obviously Pedro as a director has been, I imagine, everything at certain points in your life. But is there a performer as well who's given that to you, other than your husband? Or probably your husband.
Exactly. I was going to say my husband, because I have such an amazing actor at home. I am
really
able to work with him, like sometimes read scripts together. I read his, he reads mine, and then we can give each other ideas. And we don't talk about work all the time. I mean, you know how that is. But to be able to have that, to go and say, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this scene? And also to have had the opportunity to work with him a few times, like 4 or 5 times. And it's not something that I would do every 2 years, because that's risky, I think. I mean, if we have survived playing Pablo Escobar and Virginia Vallejo and I didn't kill him then, it's okay. But it's not something that I think is safe to do very, very often. But once in a while, I love it. I think he's such an incredible actor.
Yeah, it must be amazing. I mean, I saw that dynamic with Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons. It's amazing. I think the hardest thing was to sort of create a new intimacy between them, but to watch them work together, you completely understand the meeting of their souls.
She said she loved it. She said she would do it every year.
Yeah, he's her favorite actor and she's his favorite actress. And I mean, that's how their work began together. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. I loved working opposite Jesse. He's got a similar fastidiousness to me, and a kind of a need to leave it all on the floor, to just try everything out. But what's profound about him is, I really think he's one of the truly great modern cinematic actors. Everything he does is so grounded in a naturalism that's not, it's interesting. He's not, demonstrating his pain in front of you. It's there, quietly there. Everything is based on a really profound inner truth.
He's really, really amazing in the movie.
Yeah, he still can convey great complexity. I mean, he really is one of my favorite actors. So to become friends with him and work opposite him was a joy. And every scene we had together it helped me really raise my game.
25 years since our first run together. 1900 and nothing.
That's a long time.
Not too damn long.
I would say, I mean, it's difficult. My influences have been along the way, like watching Gary Oldman perform his sort of recounting a meeting Carla in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and I'm playing Peter Gwilym, who's his sort of right-hand guy within MI6. And I was sat there, through a haze of us in character, having drunk a little bit of whiskey, and just watching this master give what, it was like being in a pub theatre and being an audience of one to Gary Oldman.
He's one of my favorite actors of all time, too.
It was very, very special. I'll tell you who else, actually, who really, really reminded me of two great lessons, actually, Meryl Streep gave me. I had a small part in August Osage County, and that was an amazing cast to watch. I mean, Juliette Lewis.
I'm always looking for that small part so that I can be there and...
Julia Roberts. Well, exactly. And I was like, And I think I'd already done some bigger stuff by then, but it didn't matter to me. This was it. To be in a company like that was just extraordinary. And I watched in that dinner table scene where Meryl Streep's character's having to battle with grief, drug addiction, drunkenness, and a family secret, and just to watch her play with the full orchestra of her ability. And every single take was completely different. And I remember talking to her, not on the day, because she was very much in her space, but I was on a balcony having a cigarette with her. She smokes, folks. That's it. And I used to, but I'm sure she doesn't anymore. Anyway, point is, we were having a cigarette and chatting. And I went, do you have a singular way of approaching things? She went, oh no, I don't have a method. It's different every time, isn't it for you? And I went, yeah, and I'm getting nervous that I don't have an armor to fall back on, but every job is different. Every director, every demand, every person you work with in front of camera and behind it's different.
But how brave is that? I also wanted to congratulate you on the incredible success of Spider-Man.
Oh, thank you very much. All my doing.
How did it feel to be part of that?
I mean, amazing. I'm very spoiled because Tom Holland and I had sort of petitioned that the kind of neighborhood superheroes should definitely cross paths again, having had some time together on Titan and doing everything they did in Avengers. And we got on very well. We've acted together in a number of films now. I didn't know it would manifest, and then it did. And I John Watts is just brilliant, and those script writers are fantastic. And that whole world coming to a sort of conclusion of sorts. This isn't a giveaway; it's not a conclusion, but just to have those three films culminate in that moment, it was extraordinary to be a part of, and to let my character make some hefty mistakes out of love, really, out of generosity towards someone he realizes he really cares for. I mean, there's more to answer on that front, but yeah, just from a standalone success of a movie, of a franchise, it's phenomenal. And numbers are one thing, but to know that comes from people going to a cinema and sitting down and having that live experience, having witnessed that at the premiere, both the line of people outside and then the people inside, and the sort of participatory joy of everything that's in that film is kind of wonderful. And it traverses all the past sort of 20 years of Spider-Man, and it's, I don't know, I genuinely sat there being entertained, thrilled, really moved. I laughed a lot. I cheered. It's a fantastic feeling to be back in a cinema, being able to do that, and to prove that not everything has to be streamed. And I think that's really, really important moving forwards, not just for exhibitors, but for the sort of the social gain, the excitement of being in a crowd of people experiencing that live thing of watching it. And cinema for American audiences is their theatre, and meant to many regards, not to disrespect Broadway, but the access to it, the number of people that see it in a movie theatre, and just how engaged people are, how vocal and physical people are while they're watching a film. It's a really refreshing thing to be in.
I do that all the time. I get so excited to be in a room with strangers watching and I talk and I comment on everything. People get really annoyed with me when I go to the cinema, but for me, it's such an incredible experience since I was a little girl. And imagine a world where the younger generations or the ones to come don't have that ritual in their lives. We cannot give that up. Nothing compares with watching it there, not at home with 100 interruptions.
Oh God, there's so much more I want to talk about. There's so much more we could talk about.
Me too. I could be here for hours.
Penelope, what a joy to speak to you. I can't tell you how big a fan I am, and just to be able to talk to you after this incredible performance yet again, a really special piece of work.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to you on this incredible performance. And I'm really, really happy to meet you, even if it's this way, and hope to see you soon.